When you think of a billion-dollar restaurant empire, what comes to mind? Powerful corporations? Celebrity founders? Massive marketing budgets? The story of Chipotle Mexican Grill proves all of that wrong. This is the story of how an accidental restaurant, started by a chef who didn't even want to be in the business, became a global phenomenon. Our story begins not with a grand vision, but with a compromise. Steve Ells was a classically trained chef from the Culinary Institute of America. His dream was to open a fine dining restaurant, a place where food was treated as an art form, not just a convenience. But the reality of the culinary world is harsh. Fine dining requires a lot of money, powerful connections, and years of building a reputation. Steve had none of that. So, he came up with a temporary solution. A stepping stone. He decided he would open a small, simple restaurant, make some quick money, and then use that cash to fund his real dream. That temporary solution, that afterthought, was Chipotle. In 1993, with an $85,000 loan from his father, Steve opened a tiny, 850-square-foot restaurant in Denver, Colorado. The decor was minimal, the expectations were low, and there was absolutely no marketing plan. The idea was simple: serve delicious burritos and tacos inspired by the taquerias he loved in San Francisco. The key was using fresh ingredients and preparing everything right in front of the customer. From the very first week, something completely unexpected happened. People didn't just come. They lined up down the block. They came back the next day. They brought their friends. This wasn't just another fast food joint. The food felt different. At the time, your choices were limited. You had cheap, processed fast food on one end and slow, expensive sit-down restaurants on the other. Chipotle carved out a brand new space right in the middle, offering speed without sacrificing quality. Steve quickly noticed that people were willing to pay a little more for his food. Not because it was trendy, but because it felt honest. You could see every ingredient. You could watch the entire cooking process. There were no hidden freezers, no microwaves, no shortcuts. That transparency built a powerful sense of trust long before anyone even thought about branding. Within a single month, that tiny Denver shop was selling over 1,000 burritos a day. What started as a short-term plan to fund a different dream was suddenly showing massive long-term potential. But Steve didn't rush. Instead of immediately opening a second location, he focused on perfecting the first one. He tweaked the portion sizes, he refined the preparation methods, and most importantly, he kept the menu incredibly small. This was a deliberate choice. Fewer items meant his team could execute them perfectly and serve customers faster. This discipline became a cornerstone of Chipotle's identity. When the second and third locations eventually opened, the same principles were strictly applied. There was no franchising. Steve avoided the rapid, uncontrolled expansion that many chains pursue. Growth was slow, deliberate, and entirely controlled from within. Each new restaurant had to meet the exact same high standards as the very first one. While other fast food giants were obsessed with cutting costs and speeding up service, Chipotle was obsessed with consistency and quality. This decision might have limited their growth in the short term, but it built an unshakable foundation for the brand. By the late 1990s, Chipotle had proven its model worked. The demand was clearly there. But to expand further, they needed serious capital. And that's when a surprising player entered the picture: McDonald's. In 1998, the fast food giant made a major investment in the small burrito chain. This partnership gave Chipotle access to a world of resources, real estate expertise, supply chain infrastructure, and the money needed to grow. But this wasn't a typical takeover. Steve Ells insisted on one crucial condition: Chipotle would retain complete control over its food, its sourcing, and its operations. This brilliant move allowed the company to scale up without selling out. It could grow like a big corporation while still thinking and acting like that original small restaurant in Denver. During this period of growth, Chipotle defined what it stood for. It wasn't just about burritos anymore. It was about proving that fast food could be good food. The company's philosophy was simple: fast doesn't have to mean careless, and affordable doesn't have to mean low quality. This belief later evolved into their famous tagline, "Food with Integrity." But back then, it wasn't a marketing slogan. It was just how they operated. They cared about where their ingredients came from. They cared about how animals were raised. And they cared deeply about their employees. Chipotle hired people differently. They looked for character and passion, not just experience. They promoted heavily from within, believing that today's cashier could be tomorrow's manager. This created an incredible culture of ownership and pride within each restaurant, reducing turnover and improving service, and customers could feel that difference. By the early 2000s, Chipotle was no longer an experiment. It was a cultural force. The brand didn't need to shout with flashy ads or chase fleeting trends. Its power came from delivering the same high-quality, trustworthy experience, again and again and again. This incredible consistency created unstoppable momentum. When Chipotle finally went public in 2006, Wall Street went wild. The IPO was a massive success. Investors saw what customers had known for years. This was a company with explosive growth, disciplined management, and a brand built on a foundation of pure trust. Shortly after, Chipotle bought back all of its shares from McDonald's, becoming a fully independent company once again. From the outside, it looked like the start of an unstoppable empire. Chipotle was on top of the world. But growth always brings complexity, and with complexity comes risk. The very things that made Chipotle special, the fresh ingredients, the open kitchens, the rapid expansion, also created vulnerabilities. Every single step, from the farm to the foil wrapper, required perfect execution at a massive scale. And as they were about to find out, maintaining perfection at that level is incredibly fragile. The foundation was strong. The vision was clear. But the system, the very system that had brought them so much success, had not yet been truly tested under pressure. Have you ever wondered how a simple burrito joint became a cultural phenomenon? This is the story of Chipotle, a brand that didn't just sell food, it sold a philosophy. And it's a story of how that philosophy was pushed to its absolute limit. As Chipotle started expanding across the United States, it was obvious this wasn't just another fast food chain. Every new location was a masterclass in discipline and consistency. While competitors were bloating their menus and opening stores as fast as they could, Chipotle was deliberate, almost stubbornly so. The menu stayed small: burritos, tacos, rolls. You could customize your meal, but the core complexity was tightly controlled. This simplicity turned into a massive strategic advantage. Customers knew exactly what they were getting every single time, and employees could execute their tasks perfectly without cutting corners. Every single store followed the same strict procedures, down to the tiniest detail. Rice had to be cooked a specific way. Beans had to be prepared consistently. Meats were grilled fresh right in front of you. Vegetables were chopped daily, and salsas were made in-house. There were no microwaves, no frozen shortcuts. This was a place where real cooking happened. And every employee was trained to understand why these details mattered. Unlike most fast food chains that prioritize speed above all else, Chipotle's philosophy was to deliver both speed and quality. The culture inside the company was just as important. Employees were promoted from within. A line cook could become a manager, and a manager could become a regional leader. This wasn't just a side project. Developing leaders was central to the brand's identity. Employees felt a real sense of ownership over the process, the food, and the customer's experience. This focus on people led to lower turnover and higher accountability. That staff loyalty translated directly into better service and happier customers. Around this time, Chipotle began to voice a bigger mission. The phrase "food with integrity" became more than just a catchy slogan. It was a promise. It meant sourcing meat responsibly, avoiding artificial flavors, supporting local farmers, and ensuring animal welfare. Yes, these choices made the food more expensive to produce, But the company bet that customers would notice and care. And they were right. People weren't just buying a burrito. They felt like they were making an ethical choice. This emotional connection built a kind of loyalty that no discount or special offer could ever match. By the early 2000s, Chipotle's popularity was exploding. Its restaurants were highly profitable, its operations were disciplined, and its reputation was rock solid. People were happy to pay a little more than they would at other fast food places, not for some marketing gimmick, but because the experience felt genuine. Word of mouth was so powerful that it drove growth more effectively than any advertising campaign. Customers just kept coming back. But with this incredible success came a classic dilemma. How do you grow into a national powerhouse without sacrificing the quality that made you special? McDonald's had invested early on, providing capital and operational advice. But scaling a philosophy built on freshness and transparency is a lot harder than just opening new stores. Each new restaurant demanded careful site selection, a robust supply chain, and strict operational oversight. Chipotle had to find a way to grow quickly while staying true to its core values. To solve this, the company invested heavily in training and systems. Employees didn't just learn how to prepare food. They learned why each step was critical. Managers were expected to enforce these high standards without compromise. The supply chains were expanded but also closely monitored to ensure quality never slipped. This approach was more expensive and slower than the typical fast food model, but it was essential for protecting the brand's identity. The IPO in 2006 was a major turning point. Suddenly, Chipotle was under the intense scrutiny of the public market. Investors demanded constant growth and profitability, while customers demanded the same consistency and integrity they had come to love. It was a very delicate balancing act. But somehow, the company thrived. The IPO provided the cash needed for a massive national expansion, allowing Chipotle to open hundreds of new locations in major cities across the country. And because they managed this growth carefully, they avoided the common pitfalls that have doomed so many other fast-growing chains. By this stage, Chipotle was more than just a restaurant. It was a brand with an ethos, a company with a mission, and a business model that challenged the entire industry. It had redefined what fast food could mean: fresh, ethical, fast, and profitable. Analysts studied its model, competitors watched its every move, and customers became its most passionate evangelists. But success always introduces new challenges. Scaling operations to hundreds, then thousands, of locations dramatically increased the complexity of everything from supply chains to employee training and quality control. Every new store was another chance for something to go wrong, and the margin for error was shrinking fast. While Chipotle's principles were strong, executing them flawlessly at a national scale was the ultimate test. The company also faced a wave of new competition from other fast casual brands that were inspired by its success. As the industry evolved, customer expectations shifted. Digital ordering, convenience, and speed became more important than ever. Chipotle's commitment to simplicity and quality was still its foundation, but new pressures required adaptation. Technology, logistics, and digital customer engagement were no longer optional. Despite these pressures, Chipotle continued to expand. Revenue climbed steadily into the billions. The brand became a cultural icon, a symbol of ethical consumption, and a higher standard for fast food. It wasn't just about burritos anymore. It was about trust, consistency, and the overall experience. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Until 2015. That's when the brand faced its first true crisis, a test of its very resilience. Reports started to surface of customers getting sick after eating at Chipotle. At first, the incidents seemed isolated, but soon, they spread across multiple states. The media coverage exploded. Social media amplified every single report, creating a firestorm of negative publicity. The brand's most valuable asset, customer trust, was under direct attack. Foot traffic in the stores nosedived. Sales plummeted. The stock price fell off a cliff. For a company that had built its entire empire on loyalty and customer faith, the situation was an unprecedented disaster. Executives were under immense pressure. Critics and analysts began to question whether Chipotle's entire business model was fundamentally flawed. Could a company built on fresh, minimally processed ingredients actually scale safely at a national level? Or had the very practices that made it unique become its greatest vulnerability? Chipotle's response was decisive. Restaurants were temporarily closed for deep cleaning and massive staff retraining sessions. Suppliers were audited, and food safety systems were completely redesigned from the ground up. Millions of dollars were invested to ensure this could never happen again. But even as they implemented these operational fixes, it became clear that restoring customer confidence would take more than just new procedures. Trust had to be rebuilt, one customer, one burrito at a time. This period became a defining moment. The leadership team made a critical choice. They would not abandon the principles that built the brand. Instead, they would adapt, strengthen their systems, and communicate with total transparency. They openly acknowledged their mistakes. They redesigned processes with both scale and integrity in mind. Employees were retrained to execute flawlessly, while management focused on reinforcing the brand's core values. At the same time, the company recognized that consumer behavior was changing. Technology was no longer a nice-to-have. It was critical. Digital ordering, mobile apps, and delivery services were becoming the new standard. Convenience was everything. So, Chipotle invested heavily in its digital infrastructure, creating user-friendly apps, loyalty programs, and online ordering systems that integrated smoothly with their kitchen operations. These changes prepared the company for its next chapter. By doubling down on operational excellence, a strong culture, and modern technology, Chipotle managed to stabilize its business. Slowly but surely, customers began to return. The brand's recovery was underway. What looked like a catastrophic crisis from the outside became internally a powerful catalyst for evolution. The lessons were crystal clear. Growth without rock-solid systems and a disciplined culture is fragile, and even a brand built on trust can be tested. Chipotle's philosophy of integrity, fresh ingredients, and employee development had to be combined with operational precision and technological adaptation to survive and thrive in the modern market. Remember Chipotle? Back in 2015, it was more than just a place to get a burrito. It was the icon of ethical fast food, celebrated for its fresh ingredients and commitment to quality. But then, crisis struck. A series of foodborne illness outbreaks linked to its restaurants sent shockwaves through the company and the country. The aftermath was brutal. Chipotle, once the darling of the industry, found itself under intense, unflattering spotlight. The once bustling restaurants, famous for lines stretching out the door, suddenly felt eerily quiet. The energy was gone, replaced by a tense silence. Customers, once evangelists for the brand, were now either gone or approaching the counter with fear and frustration. For employees, the uncertainty was palpable. Anxiety hung in the air. This wasn't just a PR problem or a logistical hiccup. It was a crisis that struck at the very soul of the company. Founder Steve Ells and his leadership team were at a crossroads. They faced a choice that would define Chipotle's future. They could lay low, hope the storm would pass, and let the negative headlines fade. Or they could step into the fire, confront the problem head-on, and take full public responsibility. They chose the harder path. Almost immediately, Chipotle's leaders were in front of cameras. Through press conferences, interviews, and public statements, they began a campaign of radical transparency. They didn't make excuses. They acknowledged their failures and promised to do whatever it took to fix them. But they knew words weren't enough. Honesty had to be paired with decisive, visible action. Without it, trust would be lost forever. Behind the scenes, the company was waging a war on a massive operational scale. It was a logistical nightmare. Every single one of its hundreds of restaurants had to be retrained on entirely new, stricter food safety protocols. The entire supply chain was put under a microscope. Suppliers were audited, their products tested, and in some cases, they were replaced entirely. Kitchens were redesigned to minimize any risk of cross-contamination. New systems were rolled out to track and monitor food from the farm all the way to the customer's tray. This was an incredibly expensive and time-consuming overhaul, but there was no alternative. Cutting corners at this stage would have been corporate suicide, risking more outbreaks and permanently destroying their reputation. The very culture of quality and employee empowerment that Chipotle had built was now facing its ultimate test. The human element was just as critical as the new systems. Employee morale was at an all-time low. They needed to believe in the company again before they could convince customers to do the same. So Chipotle invested heavily in its people. Managers were not just enforcers of new rules. They became ambassadors for the brand's recovery. Rigorous training programs, weekly team meetings, and constant feedback loops were implemented to make sure every single employee felt safe, supported, and understood their vital role in rebuilding the company. But the customers remained skeptical, and rightly so. For the first time in its history, Chipotle's integrity was being questioned by a national audience. Social media was a wildfire of bad press, amplifying every rumor and every story of illness. Each visit to a Chipotle restaurant became a high-stakes moment. A single mistake could shatter a customer's perception for good. Rebuilding that confidence wouldn't be a quick fix. It would require months, even years, of operational perfection and unwavering accountability. Through all this chaos, Chipotle refused to abandon its core principles. The commitment to fresh, non-processed ingredients, ethical sourcing, and cooking in-house remained. The real challenge was figuring out how to make those principles work within a system that was now rigorously focused on safety at a massive scale. It's one thing to maintain quality in a few dozen restaurants. It's another to guarantee it across thousands. This was the ultimate test of integrity. Interestingly, it was during this dark period that technology started to play a much bigger role. Mobile ordering and delivery, once just a side feature, suddenly became a lifeline. Customers who were hesitant to dine in could now order through the Chipotle app with a newfound sense of confidence and control. The company poured resources into its digital platforms, making them intuitive, reliable, and scalable. This digital shift wasn't just a temporary solution. It was a strategic pivot that would position Chipotle for incredible long-term growth. The recovery was slow and steady. There was no magic moment, no single announcement that fixed everything. It was a painstaking day-by-day process. Customers returned, but gradually. The brand worked tirelessly to reassure them at every single touchpoint. Social media, once a source of pain, was now used to highlight their new transparency, showcase their farmer partnerships, and explain the new safety protocols. Every burrito served, every clean table, every positive interaction was a small step toward restoring trust. This crisis also forced a complete overhaul of the company's leadership and accountability structures. Decision-making became more centralized around safety and compliance. Growth plans were put on hold. The company knew it couldn't even think about opening new locations until it had stabilized its existing ones and could guarantee the highest standards everywhere. One of the most powerful lessons to emerge was the deep connection between a brand's values and its operational systems. Before the crisis, Chipotle had relied heavily on its reputation and culture. But the outbreak revealed that principles alone are not enough. They must be supported by robust, enforceable processes. Culture and systems could no longer be separate entities. They had to be completely intertwined. As the company stabilized, it began to innovate again. It started testing new restaurant formats, like pickup-only locations designed for the growing number of digital orders. They launched loyalty programs and used data to personalize offers, anticipate demand, and make the supply chain even more efficient. This integration of technology didn't replace the human touch that made Chipotle special. It enhanced it, ensuring that both speed and quality could be delivered consistently. By the late 2010s, the comeback was undeniable. Revenue was climbing. Digital sales, once a small fraction of the business, were now a massive part of their revenue. The scars from the crisis remained, but they had reshaped the organization, making it more resilient, more adaptive, and stronger than ever. The systems were more robust, employees were more skilled, and the company's reputation was on the mend. Chipotle's story is one of the most remarkable examples of business resilience in modern history. They survived a public relations nightmare, completely re-engineered their operations, and embraced technology, all without sacrificing the core values that define them. It proved that a company's commitment to integrity can weather even the most severe storms. The crisis taught the entire industry a valuable lesson. Scale magnifies everything, both your strengths and your weaknesses. What works for a small chain can become a critical vulnerability when you operate nationwide. Maintaining excellence at scale requires meticulous planning, an engaged workforce, technological adaptation, and absolute accountability from leadership. Chipotle's journey back wasn't about flashy marketing gimmicks. It was about perseverance, resilience, and the hard, unglamorous work of earning back trust, one customer at a time. While competitors might chase trends or cut corners for a quick profit, Chipotle doubled down on quality and safety. It was a costly, risky bet, but it was the only way to ensure long-term survival. By 2020, the company wasn't just recovered. It was transformed. The digital infrastructure they built during the crisis became a permanent, powerful competitive advantage. They had multiple revenue streams, a fiercely loyal customer base, and a culture stronger than ever. Chipotle turned its greatest crisis into its greatest opportunity, proving that with true commitment, even the deepest wounds can heal and make you stronger. When the world shut down in 2020, the restaurant industry faced an apocalypse. Dining rooms went dark, and many beloved chains struggled, with some closing forever. But one company was strangely prepared. This is the story of how Chipotle not only survived the chaos but turned a global crisis into its greatest opportunity. As the early 2020s began, consumer habits changed almost overnight. The COVID-19 pandemic forced everyone indoors, and suddenly the way we ate was completely different. For restaurants, it was a moment of truth: adapt or disappear. While competitors scrambled to figure out online ordering and delivery, Chipotle was already miles ahead. For years, they had been quietly investing in digital infrastructure, a powerful mobile app, and a smooth delivery system. So, when customers couldn't come to them, Chipotle was ready to go to the customer. This wasn't just luck. It was strategy. Chipotle ensured that ordering from your couch felt just as reliable as standing in line. Every digital order was tracked with precision. The pickup and delivery process was fine-tuned for speed and quality. Even during the peak of lockdowns, Chipotle delivered a consistent experience, building trust when everything else felt uncertain. While others were trying to build a digital lifeboat, Chipotle was already sailing a well-equipped ship. This moment became a massive turning point. Digital sales exploded. The Chipotle app went from a convenience to a necessity for millions, and their loyalty program membership skyrocketed. Even when restaurants started to reopen, a new normal had been established. A hybrid model of in-person dining, pickup, and delivery was here to stay, and Chipotle was already the master of it. The crisis had tested every part of the company, from its culture and leadership to its operations and customer relationships. Chipotle's response proved they could adapt without sacrificing the very principles that made them famous in the first place. Fresh ingredients, responsible sourcing, and transparent cooking remained at the core of their brand. Technology wasn't used to replace their human touch. It was used to enhance it. By 2021, this incredible resilience paid off in a big way. Chipotle's annual revenues soared past $5.6 billion, showing not just a recovery, but unprecedented growth. Their stock price climbed as investors saw the power of their long-term strategy. Analysts praised their smart use of technology and their unwavering commitment to quality. Chipotle was no longer just a fast casual giant. It had become a textbook example of how to build a business that can weather any storm. The Chipotle story reveals a powerful truth that many people miss when building a company. Success is never a straight line. With growth comes complexity, and that complexity exposes both your greatest strengths and your biggest weaknesses. The very things that made Chipotle special is focus on freshness, minimal processing, and local sourcing also created risks. The fact that they survived a major public health crisis and a global pandemic while staying true to their identity is almost unheard of in the fast food world, where cutting corners for profit is common. But it wasn't just about systems and technology. The human element was just as crucial. The employees, managers, and leaders were the ones who truly brought the company back. Over decades, Chipotle had built a culture where people felt a sense of ownership, understood the mission, and were empowered to make a difference. No amount of technology could restore public trust on its own. The people packing the burritos, managing the kitchens, and talking to customers were the real heroes of the brand's comeback. Their approach to technology also offers a masterclass for any modern business. By the time the pandemic hit, digital ordering, delivery logistics, and loyalty programs were already deeply woven into their operations. This foresight turned a potential disaster into a golden opportunity. Digital sales weren't just a side project. They became a lifeline. Chipotle showed the world how you can innovate and scale with technology while still preserving the soul of your brand. Today, Chipotle is a multi-billion-dollar icon with a loyal fan base that spans generations. Its journey from a single restaurant in Denver to an industry leader is a testament to the power of vision, discipline, and resilience. They faced near collapse, navigated intense public scrutiny, adapted to massive shifts in consumer behavior, and somehow emerged stronger than ever before. Every single burrito, taco, and bowl they serve represents a decades-long commitment to quality, integrity, and consistency. But the Chipotle story is about more than just revenue and stock prices. It's about building a brand that customers genuinely trust, that employees are proud to be a part of, and that can withstand any crisis without selling out its core values. It's a story about the patience it takes to grow the right way, the courage to admit your mistakes, and the strategic wisdom to use technology without losing your identity. From the outside, it might look like a simple success story. But in reality, it's a complex saga of risk, reinvention, and remarkable adaptation. It proves that true lasting success in business is never an accident. It's earned, day by day, through deliberate choices that put integrity, discipline, and the customer experience above all else. In the end, Chipotle's incredible rise, near fall, and stunning comeback offers timeless lessons that go far beyond the food industry. It teaches us that resilience, smart adaptation, and an unbreakable commitment to your principles can turn any challenge into a stepping stone for growth. If you want to see more in-depth stories like this and cover the hidden lessons behind America's biggest brands and learn how ordinary companies became billion-dollar successes, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and join us as we explore the rise, fall, and comeback of businesses shaping our world. Thanks for watching.